why he was leaning towards not having you speak with the prosecutor. And he actually spoke to the prosecutor, and they decided that they think it would be a good idea for you to speak to them. So we're just trying to figure out the logistics of how it's all going to work, and once they figure that out, then we'll be in touch with you and let you know when we're planning on setting that up and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. That sounds good.
So that's where we're at with that. And then I did watch your videos, and I did still have a few questions, not directly related to the videos per se, but just in general.
Sure.
So did you consider all of the CRM data in Bullhorn proprietary, or just some of it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know that answer. I mean, I know that they were just unhappy that someone had access to those records.
Okay.
You know.
Someone who wasn't employed there anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Once all of the information is entered into Bullhorn, is there a way to identify where the information came from? If it came from a scrape or if it came from somewhere else?
Yeah, and I had spoken with about that because we went through the records. There was some sample records given, and essentially I said, well, I'd like to see all of the records. You know, I believe it was 16,000 or so records that they claimed.
Yeah.
And they had given a small sampling, and then they had basically correlated each one of those to a user or an ID number, but they hadn't given the entire record. And I spoke at length with Ed about this, and if the status is at imported, it means the data was simply scraped and pushed directly into the system. So there are several statuses that happen.
Okay. What would some of the other statuses be?
Well, typically, once it goes from imported, I have to kind of think back. The next status would be imported, new provider, candidate. I can find all the different statuses, but essentially, you know, once you reach out to a candidate, you basically do an application on them. You know, if you were a physician, I would call you. I would ask you some questions about your training, your availability, your malpractice history, your track record, the types of cases that you do, etc. I'd enter that information, and then I would change the status from imported to probably new contact is the next step. And then once you get their CV, then you import the CV, and then that changes the status again. And then if they become credentialed with us, that changes the status again. And there's several other statuses like you would change. Like if I said, okay, I'll go ahead and send you our credentialing packet, I would change the status to packet out, meaning that I had sent you our credentialing packet and we were waiting for it to come back. So there are several statuses. But to answer your question, the way you would determine that is by the status. The status would be imported.
Okay.
And I had asked if we could get that record from the prosecution in order to determine that exact scenario. That, you know, and the bottom line is that, you know, if we ask for it just to verify all of the records, I mean, it'll be kept in confidence. And then I'd like to know what those statuses are.
Okay. And that could obviously prove to be helpful.
I mean, we're trying to correlate value here. And then there was another component that I discussed with, which was, if it was indeed just imported, you saw how quickly that information was scraped.
Yeah.
I mean,
it looked like that first video, it was a little over 8 minutes long, and you had 500 records.
right. Well, I got every single record I got 66,000 some odd records deduped in 3 days. Yeah. So, and at a cost of 400 some odd dollars, plus, if you put in man hours at 20, $30 an hour, whatever you want to say. But even then, you're not sitting there working on it. It's doing its thing. Yep. And, I guess the obvious question would be, well, then why didn't you just do that on your own as opposed to go in and have access to some of this information? And the answer, I think is two-part. First is, I was pretty pissed off and upset, and I wanted to be, I wasn't being malicious. I just, was in there kind of rooting around. And then secondarily is some of that information was given. It wasn't even accessed through the back end.
What do you mean by that?
Given me a drive with exports and with passwords called Waterfowl Beware. And, I guess if you look at the nature of the charge that we're discussing here is unauthorized access to a protected computer. Well, I mean, I guess the next question would be like, if something was actually given to me, exported internally within the company, and then handed over to me, does that mean that I illegally accessed the computer in order to gain access to those records?
I guess that's just a matter of opinion. I mean, at this point.
Right. And, I talked about that and said, well, did you solicit that? And I told him no, that I didn't, that I'd been kind of a loyal guy to me and had basically said, here, go get your money back. Because he knew how poorly, I was being treated and how unfairly. And he had seen it not just with me, but with other people within the company that had been unfairly treated.
Yeah.
Did you read any of those letters?
I haven't read the letters yet.
Okay.
I'll actually read those later this afternoon.
Okay.
But I wanted to give you a call back before it got
sure.
close to 5.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see, what other questions? Is there any sort of list of doctors and their specialties commercially available that can be purchased, or
Tons.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can send you links to those now.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Because that was going to be my next question, the names of those. But yeah, the links will be perfect.
And, on the other side of the equation, the client side, I mean, you're obviously at a computer now, correct? Mm-hmm. Go to www.ahd.org. AHD.org. Yeah, it should be American Hospital Directory.
No, this is Welcome to American Health Decisions.
Oh, let me see. Maybe I'm getting that URL wrong.
What did you say it's supposed to be? American Health?
Hospital Directory. Oh, I'm sorry. It's .com, not .org. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay.
So now this is every hospital. You can get the information for every major hospital, and build a client list.
So basically,
interesting.
What does this do? So it gives you a list of all the hospitals nationwide, and then you can go to those websites and look up all the physicians.
Well, no. I mean, there's two components. There's the client component and the physician component. So the client component is obviously hospitals, primarily. Right. So, if anybody, I mean, yeah, there's some time involved in building a client list. But let's just say you type a Google search for hospitals in Colorado. Mm-hmm. You're going to get a very succinct list of the number and name and contact information for the hospitals in Colorado. And then you would enter those into a CRM or into a spreadsheet or whatever you were using, and that would be a client. That would be basically the beginning of a client list. And it does take quite a bit of legwork because, you have to make cold calls, you have to call, you have to get to the right department, you have to get their name and their direct numbers and their email addresses and the people that make those decisions. There's another service called Billions, if you want to look that up. It's Billians. Billions is another service. It is a paid service, but it lists all of the C-level corporate executives at every hospital. It's a paid list. And that was one of the things. I know that this doesn't have bearing on what we're discussing here, but it certainly does on some level in terms of what was going on and their hiring practices. But they were directly engaging employment agreements with our competitors' employees, high-level employees,
Right, that's what you said.
in order to bring across those client lists. So just because you have the name of, like say Good Samaritan Hospital in Denver, and you got that publicly off the web, that doesn't mean that you have, direct email and phone number, because he is the COO and is the one that writes the checks for $1 billion organization. However, if someone were to say hire an individual that had that relationship with the COO of Good Samaritan or whatever hospital, they would bring that information across to
Right, with all of his personal contacts.
and the relationship as well. And
Yeah.
people follow relationships. I mean, people, if your relationship is solid with Jack, regardless of where John Smith goes, if it's a good business relationship, typically he'll sign a new agreement with wherever John Smith ends up going, wherever he gets employed.
Right. And then my next question is kind of twofold here.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you tell me approximately what percentage of the information in Bullhorn was from data scrapes? Do you have any idea?
Oh man, I would say 80%.
Okay. And then the rest, did you guys ever get e-blasts from services that would push doctor resumes? Or was that not
No, I mean there really isn't such a service that would push resumes your way, but there was. I think we discussed it briefly yesterday that there are websites that you can post a job and physicians can come to you.
Okay.
And I will tell you, by and large, those aren't physicians that you really technically wanted to work with. And there's always a red flag. If they're calling you, there's a reason.
If they're that good, they don't need to be making a phone
Right.
call like that.
Yeah, you need to be actively recruiting guys that don't want to be recruited if you want to get good doctors.
Right.
And then, the other stuff, the other way, you would get this information is you'd go to trade shows, like you'd go to the AAOS or the ACS, or there's a whole host of shows. There's even recruiting based shows where physicians would go, and you would pay to have a table, and then you just do a lot of shaking hands and meeting and greeting, and you scan badges, and you do things like that. Now, most of these shows, at the end, you can pay for a CD or a thumb drive that has all of the attendees' information. And there was, that's another very solid way to get that information put into the system. But I can tell you, the FACS and some other large organizations like that, a lot of that was very redundant. You could go meet a physician that you had never met before. You didn't know him. You didn't recognize his name. And you'd get his information at the trade show, and you'd go back and you'd put it into the system only to find that it was a duplicate because they had already scraped him elsewhere. They'd already found him from a data scrape.
Okay. And you were talking about a second ago scanning badges. So when you scan those badges, do they automatically go into a spreadsheet or?
Yeah, I mean they go. Okay. Have you ever gone to one of these type of events?
Well, I mean I've gone to a trade show before.
Okay. Well, very similar. I mean, you have at these trade shows, you have a badge scanner. Everybody gets a badge. The badge has a QR code on it. You scan the badge, and at the end of the show, the show organizer will take your scanner, and every badge that you scan, it'll spit you out a CSV or an Excel document, and then you bring that back, and you can use that as a lead list, or you can import it into Bullhorn or your CRM.
So, I mean, other than the schmoozing part, so to speak, it's not really a time-intensive thing as far as entering all of the contacts that you made at these trade shows into. No,
I mean it's just like adding it, just like we talked about yesterday. It's like adding it into your phone.
Right. Only if it's already in an Excel spreadsheet.
Then it's just one. Yeah, all you got to do is line up. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's very simple. All you have to do is make sure that the header rows match up. So in Bullhorn, if it's first, last, email, phone, fax, then you just have, and if the other form says first name _ last name, you just have to make sure everything matches up in the correct columns, and then you hit go.
Yeah.
And it's in, and you could do one record or you could do 10,000 records that way. It doesn't matter.
Right. Okay. Well, perfect. Well, I think those were the only questions that I have left.
Okay.
At this point, but like I said, once and the prosecutor figure out the prosecutor, once I figure out the logistics of the meeting, then we'll be in touch with you and let you know, figure out a time for you to come in and meet with everybody.
And my whole goal here in all of this, I mean, is I'm admitting, the culpability and all of this. But I just want to have it be known that I just can't have some sentence where I have to go to jail for 18 months. I mean, I just can't. I mean, if there's any way that we can reflect that, I'll just. Right. I mean, if they're going to literally put me in a prison for this, I mean, I'm absolutely kind of freaking out about it.
Well, I can understand that. I mean, like we talked about yesterday, for anyone to go to prison, it's not ideal, obviously, but for someone who doesn't have a criminal history, hasn't ever really been in trouble other than, maybe a DUI or whatever, I can understand. It's definitely scary and.
It's very scary, and this isn't. This isn't internet crime. It's not fraud. It's not.
Right. It's not the crime of the century.
Right, and there really isn't. I mean, at the end of the day, all you're doing with this information is, if I would pick up the phone, I would call you, I'd say, Dr. F***y, would you like a job?
Right. I mean, like you said yesterday, it's not like you did anything with the information.
No, nothing ever. It didn't go anywhere, which is, I mean. Even more ridiculous, it's kind of double-edged sword. It's like, well, would it have been better if you would have used this information, or would it be worse for you? I mean, but here I am facing this very stiff penalty for information that I didn't do anything with.
Right. I can understand the frustration there for sure.
Well, the biggest frustration is in the way they treated me and others around me. So yeah, if you get a chance, definitely read those letters, and I would anticipate there's going to be more coming down the pipe for me and for Matt and for others in terms of a civil action.
Yeah. All right, Blake. Well, I really appreciate your time.
Okay, sure.
Today, and I'll read those letters, and if you have any questions, obviously you can email us or give us a call, and then we'll be in touch once I get the logistics figured out with Steve.
Okay.